All right. My name is YoNasDa Lone Wolf, and you are now tuning into Walk in My Moccasins, the podcast. You never know a man or a woman until you have walked a mile in their moccasins. And I am so happy that I have my good friend, my sister, author. I mean, just a critically acclaimed author, activist. There's so much to say about my sister, Kimberly Latrice Jones, and I'm so happy that you are my second episode for Walk in My Moccasins podcast. How are you doing, Kim?
I'm doing grand. How are you today, Queen?
I'm doing so good. We both just came back from an amazing protest with Monteria Robinson,
Yes.
and so fighting for Jamarian.
Yeah.
And so, it's just really great that after all these years of us being on a front line with Monteria, that we was able to get an indictment yesterday. So that feels really good.
It does. And you know what's so funny? It feels all this month has felt so like YoNasDa full circle for me. And what I mean by that is this is the month of October. So like the first real protest that I participated in was 4 years ago in October with you. And that's when I met Monteria. But that's also when I met the cheerleaders from Kennesaw State who had taken a knee and lost their scholarships. So now, fast forward 4, which is another strong completion number, 4 years later, in the same month, Monteria gets an indictment on the officer who murdered her son. Also, 4 years later, in the same month, my book, Why We Fly, which was inspired by the Kennesaw State cheerleaders, came out.
Yes.
This is like, I don't know what the ancestors are trying to tell me with this, but this is like it's all connected and came together.
It really has, and it is a full circle moment. And the reason why I wanted you to be on Walk in My Moccasins is because we could learn so much from our testimonies and our experiences and all of that. Before you went viral, before you became New York Times bestseller, who is Kim? Where was she born? Talk to us. Let people know a little bit of your history.
So I grew up in Illinois. We lived on the west side of Chicago until I was about 2. And then my parents divorced. And we moved out to my grandmother's farm in rural Illinois, in Momence, Illinois, for 2 years. And then we moved to Kankakee, Illinois, a small town outside of Chicago. And we lived there until I was about 10. And then my mom remarried, and we moved in with my stepdad on the south side of Chicago in the Wild Hundreds.
Wild Hundreds, crazy.
So I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I went to 3 high schools. I finally landed in what I think was the right high school for me, which was the Chicago Academy for the Arts. And that's where my love of writing really got nurtured. And I really have found my place and my people. And so it's like, it's been writing ever since. And it's funny because my mother, may she rest in peace.
May she rest in peace.
Yes, my mother was a consistent community advocate. I think it would be a stretch to call her an activist, but she was one of those people who was always on a board for some like cancer walk team or, March of Dimes walk team. She had started this amazing thing when I was younger called Rap Session. And she would do it Friday nights at this church in like their community room. And it was basically like a forum for young people to come and express themselves.
Wow.
And Friday night, and kids between the ages of 14 and 25, instead of wanting to go out, they would want to come to Rap Session with my mom, and she would have expert speakers and all of that. What was that show back in the day with Ananda Lewis?
I was a part of it. Teen Summit.
BET's
Teen Summit.
Yes. So she basically created her own Teen Summit in the community.
Yes.
And people still, when I go home to Chicago to this day, come up to me and be like, man, I remember going to rap session with your mom on Friday nights. And, and so she really taught me the importance and significance of caring about others. Like I said, she was not like a frontline advocate, but she was always in the community. She was one of the original employees of the Cradle to Classroom program, which is a program that for teen moms would assign them a mentor that would stay with them from the time they realized they were pregnant until their child was in kindergarten.
Wow.
So, and it was called Cradle to Classroom. And so she was that woman. So I was raised by that woman.
That woman.
I was raised by that woman. And so she just always was a person who, we didn't have a whole lot of money, but we weren't dirt poor. But my mother would find resources for us. So she would put me in after school programs at places like DuSable Museum, Operation Push. She would on Saturday mornings drop us off at the Carter G. Woodson Library, which has one of the largest Black collections in the world, and just leave us there all day on Saturday while she did her shopping and was like, go read. And so I just can't say enough, like, who I am is based on who she was. You know what I mean? And so I'm just trying to carry the Lula torch as best possible.
And you're doing an amazing job doing it. What book was it that you read that you was like, I want to tell my own stories, or I want to tell a story? What book did you read as a child that inspired you to write?
There were two books that really had an effect on me. One, oddly enough, was Animal Farm. I got assigned that at school, and I really loved that book, and the politics of what was happening in that book was so fascinating to me. But the book that I could really say that changed my life was Man Child in the Promised Land by Claude Brown. It was the biography of this author activist and his story of his lived experience in a juvenile detention center. And it was the first time I saw representation on the page of a young Black person and what that experience looks like. And I became obsessed with that book. And interestingly enough, when I got accepted into my third high school, the Chicago Academy for the Arts, when I did my audition for the theater department, I did a monologue from that book.
Wow. Do you still remember it?
I don't. I should go back and find it, because I would recognize that section if I saw it. I need to go back. I just remember the line was him. It was him telling a story about how he saw his uncle being committed to a mental institution because he had grown up in New York, and I just remember the last line being like, "Let's call up Bellevue." And if you live in the New York area, you know what Bellevue is. So.
Yeah. You've told this story, but I really feel that more people need to hear it. So how did you end up going from, so your mother, iconic person, a community advocate in the community, everything, and your mother from, plays just grooming you and polishing you into the woman you are now, but you had to go through some things.
Yeah.
And one of them was you actually was a clown for the Ringling Brother, and then I remember you telling me about working in the entertainment industry. So let's take this. I have my moccasins on. And I'm walking with you. Tell everyone this journey, this crazy journey.
It's funny because when I graduated from high school, I had decided that what I wanted to do was to be a TV producer. But I went to college at Columbia, and I studied film with a concentration in producing. And I live, I'm neurodivergent. I live every day with ADHD. And I didn't know that at the time. I got a diagnosis later in life. And it was like one of those things where it was like so much clicked once I realized that, you know what I mean?
Wow. And so, I didn't even know that. And I've been knowing you for a long time. That's
Yep. So I was never, I could get through school because I was smart, but school was always a struggle for me. And so my freshman year of college, I just struggled. I struggled a lot trying to keep up with the work, trying to stay focused on the work, and I ended up dropping out. And my mother was like, well, you're going to have to do something. And we had a newspaper. You probably remember this newspaper. We had a newspaper in Chicago at the time called The Reader. It was kind of like, in Atlanta, it was kind of like the Creative or it was a creative arts newspaper, and they had
Yes.
a big full page ad in the Reader saying that Ringling Brothers was coming to town and that they were going to be holding auditions for people not to get into the circus, but who wanted to go to clown college. And so my
Yes.
mother took me down there.
Yeah.
She took me down there and I auditioned and I didn't think anything of it. I was just trying to find things to do because my mother was
Yeah.
like, well, you dropped out of college. Like, if you flunked out of college, like, what are you going to do? And so I applied for clown college just because I didn't even know what else to do with myself at the time. And I got in. Like, to my surprise, I got in. So I went on.
How did you dress up when you went to the audition? Like, tell us about that. I want to know. Did you put on the makeup and the whole nine?
No, I didn't. I just had on, like, I remember I had on some overalls though, and I remember regretting having on those overalls because they had you doing like tumbling and stuff like that, and I had these cumbersome overalls on. And I was like, why would I choose this? I guess I just didn't know what the audition. I didn't know you was gonna be rolling on the ground. What did I think was gonna happen in an audition for clown college?
Yes.
So I just was like wearing like some Converse and overalls and a t-shirt, and they had us do like, tell jokes and do a little comedy, and they wanted to see if we were flexible. And it wasn't even that I was a great tumbler or anything, but it was just like I was young, I was 19, so I was flexible and could tumble. So I ended up going off to clown college at Sarasota. I was not the greatest in clown college, I'm not gonna lie. And but what I was really good at was getting in the car. Which is very difficult. Getting in the clown car is very difficult. And I was really good at it. And so at the time, Ringling just needed what we call filler clowns. They didn't need people who were going to have their own bit or anything like that. They just needed clowns who could come in, be part of the parade, do the clown car, go up in the audience and dance with the kids and make balloons, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And they were like, she's really good at the car and we don't really need much past that. She's in.
You was good at the car. Is this when they pack all the clowns in the car? Is that what? Yes.
I was good at the car. And so I got to be part of the ensemble. And I did that for about a year and I had a blast doing it. I know, the circus is a controversial space because of the animals and stuff like that. But, as you know better, you do better.
Yes.
And so, unfortunately now my circus is closed. Ringling is no longer open, but it was a great experience. And I don't know, maybe one day I'll write about it.
Yeah. And it's fascinating, So you go from being a clown on Ringling Brothers.
So I go from being a clown, I come home, again, no idea what I wanted to do. So my mom was like, well, you should go visit your brother in Atlanta. My two older brothers were living here in Atlanta. And so I moved down here with one of my brothers. And he, at the time, was doing a lot in the music industry. He was managing acts. He had one client who was signed to LaFaze, and he had another client that was signed to Atlantic. And so he was, in the management space. And so he had a lot of friends in the music industry. And he hooked me up and got me an internship at DARP Studios working for Dallas, Austin.
Oh, wow.
So this is like maybe like 96. And so
this is height of TLC. 96 was like height of TLC.
Right. This is when DARP is one of the most popping studios in town. Everybody is coming in and out, through those doors or whatever. And so I was interning at DARP. And my brother had some really good friends who did sound at like the Tabernacle, Stone Mountain Park, stuff like that. Barry Ellen and Ed Hobson, rest in peace to Ed Hobson. And Ed would get me random gigs. Like, so interning at DARP, I wasn't making any money because I was an intern. But how I survived was that I had dig this. I had a part-time job at Blockbuster Video.
Wow. Okay. Right. Shout out to Blockbuster. I miss Blockbuster.
I had a part-time job at Blockbuster Video, and I would fill in the gap working for Ed doing roadie work. I remember I got to roadie one day for the White Stripes and like all these different people roadie for Ed, and I did that for a little while. But I was like young and selfish. and behaving so. And I think I became a bit too much of a handful for my brother living with him. He was in a relationship. Him and his girl had just had a baby. Shout out to my niece Effie. They had just had a baby. And so I think, and I was just like wild and honestly like disrespectful in the way that like a 20-year-old is, right? Like coming in on the hours of the night, disrupting his household and being like, what's the problem? But, and so it just started to be uncomfortable to be in the house. So I ended up going back home to Chicago and re-enrolling in school. So I enrolled in like a junior college just to start trying to get some credits and stuff like that. And I ended up working on this film called Love the Brotherhood with this kid, this dude Jaha, who had gone around fake telling people that he was George Tillman. And George Tillman was at the time filming had just finished filming Soul Food or whatever. And so George is going, this dude Jaho, whose name was also George Tillman, was going around pretending to be Soul Food George Tillman. I didn't realize that was how he was getting the money for this film. And he had me producing and stuff. And it was this thing. It was this big blow up, like the real George Tillman got on WGCI. And you know, girl, back in the day,
WGCI is that's like the CNN.
It was like the
TMZ, BT, Chicago. For those that don't know, it's the station.
Right. So he's on WGCI talking about, I don't know what this fraudulent little squad is doing, but like I'm not. That's not.
Oh
me.
my God!
And the crazy thing is, I had just worked on Soul Food. I was an extra on Soul Food, and so I was like, I knew that wasn't the George Tillman. I had just been on set with the real George Tillman, and we had the same alma mater. George went to Columbia, and we kind of chatted about that a little bit. And so I was like, I gotta get myself out of this situation. So essentially, that child low key got me ran out of my own town because nobody would touch me in the film world after that because I was associated.
Oh my God!
So I ended up coming back to Atlanta, and I came back here in an unhealthy relationship that was like killing my spirit. We
always go through those.
I ended my job back at Blockbuster, and I was working at Blockbuster and in this tumultuous relationship, and it was just bad. And it was bad enough that I really feel like I just needed to escape it. And so I ended up moving to California. I lived in Northern California. And I stayed there for a while, and I had got a job working in the call center at AirTouch Cellular, child.
I remember that. I remember call centers.
Yep, exactly.
If you worked at a call center, that means that you was making bank.
Girl, I was making like $28,000 a year, and it's in like the late 90s. I was balling. It was just me. I ain't have no kids or nothing like that. I was living my best life. I had me a little Corolla, my little cute apartment. Honey, you can tell me nothing. I was living in Sacramento getting my life.
Okay.
And so, you know, I had lived in this house and had roommates, and we ended up having to move out, and I got my own place and through all this stuff. So I started dating this guy who was probably the sweetest guy I ever dated in my life. He was a bass player, and he was just to this day, I wonder where he is now. Like, he's just the sweetest guy. And so he ended up having a gig in LA, and I just rode with him one time because Sacramento, people don't realize Sacramento, LA, like an 8-hour difference. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
And so we made a road trip and went up to LA for this gig he had, and I fell in love with LA. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with everything about LA, and I was like, I'm moved to LA. And my dad's baby sister, his youngest sister, she was always lived in Southern California. So my aunt and her husband and my cousins, I hadn't really grown up with my cousins. So this was a good time for me, especially my cousin Keisha, for us to get to know each other and stuff. And so my family, my aunt owns half of Compton. Like, it's funny because when we were at Revolutionary Healing and I was talking to Lisa and I was like, oh, my aunt is Beverly Miller. He was like, everybody know Miss Bev. I'm like, yes.
I remember him saying that. Yes.
Everybody knows Miss Bev. And so my aunt owns in Compton, she owns probably 20 pieces of real estate in terms of a mix of like houses and apartment buildings. She owns a beauty salon. She owns a barber shop. She owns a beauty supply. She owns a flower shop. And then that's what people know her from, Bev's Balloons and Flowers. And so I moved to Compton, stayed in one of my aunt's apartments in Compton. I was working at her flower shop. She made me take her flower class and get certified as a florist. I was I was working at her flower shop, and then also working at Crystal Park Hotel and Casino, which was a card casino in Compton. And while I was working there, I met this guy. I'll never forget him. Chris Crunch Williams.
Crunch Williams. Chris Crunch Williams.
Yes, he was a retired prize fighter. And he would hang, he was kind of like Hustle Man. He would hang out there at the casino. He was selling, DVDs and oils and that kind of thing. But he was just a cool dude. And me and him started hanging out. And I was telling him that I wanted to work out. And he was like, I'll take you. He's like, and apparently from what I understand from people, Chris was an amazing fighter that became injured. And it was only his injury that didn't get him to the next level. He was like, let's start working out together. And we started working out all the time. And he basically said the equivalent of like, I think you could be a contender. I think you could fight. I think let's get you trained and let's take a fight and see what happens. And so he trained me, and I fought for a little while. And
he was boxing.
I was boxing. Yep.
Boxing. Wow.
Yep. I was boxing for a little while. And then I got into I went home to Chicago to visit, and got into a really bad car accident, which caused this permanent crack in my skull. And that ended my boxing career. It was over after that. And so, and it's funny because, I'm like my face was messed up. I am amazed that this is all that's left from what happened because I flew through a windshield face first. And so,
oh my God.
Yeah. And so I stayed at home for a while and recovered, and then ended up, while I was there, just to kill time while I was there in Chicago, did this little play. They were having, like, in Chicago, they used to have this thing called like the theater. They used to have a theater festival. I think they still have it. And people put on like these little short 15 to 30-minute plays all weekend. I was taking classes at Second City, which, if people don't know about Second City, it's an improv troupe. It's a comedy school. It's where most of the people from Saturday Night Live funnel from Second City. Yeah.
Wow. And this is in Chicago.
This is in Chicago. And so and they have locations in LA and Canada too, but they are originally from Chicago. That's why the first cast of Saturday Night Live is almost all Chicagoans.
I was going to ask you, is that the Belushis, who was that? All of them. Yeah. Cause I remember they were all from Chicago.
Yep. That's why they were all from Chicago. They came out of that troupe. And so I was taking classes there. And at the time, in the touring company, Craig Robinson, who's in all the Seth Rogen movies and who was on The Office and stuff, was in the touring class. And so it was one of the girls who was in the touring company of Second City. She got all of the Black cast members of Second City together. And they used to do this thing called Tony and Tina's Wedding. It was like a dinner theater experience where it was like this crazy Italian family, and you were like a guest. They would have the wedding as part of the performance, and you were like as a guest at the reception, and they would serve dinner and everything like a reception. But this play of this crazy family would be going on around you. And it was like all the rave. Everybody was going to see Tony and Tina's Wedding at the time. And so we thought we was going to do a Black version. This girl had this idea to do a Black version. And so we did Ike and Tina's Wedding.
Oh my God. Oh, I wish I was there. I wish I was a fly on the wall during that time. This is before social media.
And so Craig Robinson was in that show. We did that show and it was amazing. My face was still semi messed up. And I just put some makeup on and made it do what it do. And so I ended up coming back to Cali and just like working and stuff and trying to break into at the time I had my heart set on being a screenwriter, and I ended up trying to break into that. And my cousin Keisha was heavily involved in like movements and initiatives for the homeless at the time, and she was running my aunt's flower shop, so I was really more so when I would work there, I would work directly for her. And so I started working with her on some of her homeless initiatives. She had an amazing initiative she used to do because she felt like people gave homeless people hot meals, and they should. But then she's like, what about when they're, when they leave those spaces and stuff? And so she had started putting together like care packages that would have like things that could last, like chips and an apple and peanut butter sandwiches and bottles of water. And she would keep these bags, and at least like she had a van, flower van. Every week we would go out and give out these bags of food, because unfortunately LA has such a ridiculously large population, too many people unhoused in Southern California. But so I would be working with my cousin. That's why I said my family were always advocating for the community. That's why I feel like sometimes it's just one of my good friends always says it got to be in you, not on you. And so I was always, as a young woman, exposed to that. And that was always modeled for me, that, you do for others. You give back. Even if you don't have a lot, you take what little you do have, and you participate in community engagement in that way. And so I still, even there, like my cousin would have me out with her on the weekends, passing out this food in these bags of sandwiches. And we did it every Thanksgiving too. That side of my family, instead of doing our own Thanksgiving, we would feed the homeless. And so I was trying to get into entertainment. I got a couple of jobs working in wardrobe. I had gotten a job for a little while as what we call a reader in Hollywood, which is your whole job is just to read scripts. And there's a thing you do called script coverage, which is a way that they like the notes on the script you just read. And you used to get paid. I don't know how they do it now, but back then you used to get paid per script. So you would get paid like $50 a script. So, you just go to these different studios and spaces and sign up to be one of their readers. And if they accepted you, you could go there on Monday, pick up 4 or 5 scripts, and then turn them next Monday with your script coverage, and they would pay you for each script. And scripts read fast, so you could read like a script a day. And I would try to just get as many as I could. And but I'll never forget, one of the first scripts that I was given to do script coverage on was Paid in Full.
What? And I just recently started following that woman, that Black woman from New York that wrote the script for Paid in Full. And I was like, I don't know how I came across her page. I don't remember her name, but I was all like, I'm gonna follow her just because she wrote. What? Wow.
Yeah.
And what did you do? Did you say this should be turned into a movie?
Yeah. So the executive that I turned that script in, I'm still Facebook friends with him. He's not even in film and TV anymore. He's in politics now.
Wow.
But Jesse Berdinka. And he said they didn't have a whole lot of Black readers back then. So he definitely, normally they don't really like talk to you. You drop your stuff off and you go. But he and I have like a friendly relationship. He kind of ended up being a little bit of a mentor to me, because everybody else say I would drop my stuff off and I go, but he would be the one executive who would talk to me. And he was a young white guy from Delaware. And he loved hip hop and stuff like that. And I thought he was so old and mature. And I realized now, because I was 22, I thought he was so old and mature. But he was like 29, 30.
Yeah, right.
But he would talk to me. And on this particular script, he was like, Kim, when you drop off Paid in Full, like, I want to talk to you about it. And I was like, okay. And he was like,
was it called Paid in Full?
It was called Paid in Full. It was called Paid in Full. And he was just picking my brain. He was like, what do you think? And do you think that, Black people will respond to this and all this kind of stuff? So I remember having a real good conversation with him about Paid in Full and giving him some notes on how I think he should do it, and he didn't take those. But I guess he was like, child, you did what you do. But I still think if he had took one of my ideas, though, it would have made the movie better, but I digress. But he was executive on it. And so I did that kind of stuff around LA, and it just wasn't working. And then I ended up getting diagnosed with cancer for the first time. I ended up getting diagnosed with cervical cancer, and that shut me down. They caught it very early so that it was able to just be repaired with surgery. And I didn't have need to do anything, but it still caused me to be down for a couple weeks, and then I started losing jobs and gigs, and me and my cousin, my other cousin Derek, who was living in LA. We were roommates at the time. And at the same time, he lost his job. He was a FedEx truck driver and he lost his job. So we both lost our job at the same time. In a month, we didn't have much money. We had gone through our little savings and we were trying to get back employed and we just could not get it together. We ended up getting evicted. And I kind of bounced around and couch surfed for a little while in Cali. And then by this time, years had gone on and I was maybe about 25 then. And I realized that it wasn't working for me anymore. I just could not ground myself and find my footing. And so I called my brother here in Atlanta and I was like, can I come stay with you again? I promise I'm not as awful as I was when I was 20. I'm 25 now. I'm better.
I'm more mature. I'm grown now.
I think I might even been a little bit older. I think I was 26. Yeah, I was like, I'm 26 now. I'm better. I'm grown. But like LA is like beating me right now and I'm struggling. Your sister is like literally sleeping on homies' couches right now. Like I need to do something else. And so he was like, come on. And it was the best decision I made because I ended up, he was staying out in Marietta at the time. And I ended up working at the Gap. And my boyfriend from LA moved down here and we ended up getting our own place at Sandy Springs when you could get cheap places in Sandy Springs back then. And we ended up getting a place. Ooh, that's been 20 years ago now. We ended up getting a place in Sandy Springs and I transferred to the Gap at Perimeter Mall. And that was the ancestors because I was in there one day. I was working in Gap Kids. And I was in there one day and I was helping this lady who had the sweetest disposition. I had never met someone and instantly felt so warm about them.
Yes.
And I got to talking about her. I was helping her pick out some stuff for her daughter, who is now a grown woman. I know she was a little bitty back then, but I was helping her pick out some stuff for her daughter. And she looked at me towards the end when I was getting ready to take her stuff up. And we had just been chatting about everything. And she was like, "You too smart to be working here. What do you really want to do? Like, what does it really do?"
Yes.
And I said, I'm a writer and I want to make movies and TV shows and stuff like that. And she was just like, well, I own a production company.
Wow.
And I was like, this lady full of crap. She don't own a dang production company. And I had just come from LA where at that time, that's still where the industry was.
Yeah. Yes.
Even if you own a production company here in Atlanta, what are you actually getting back?
Right. Right.
And so, because this was when Atlanta was a music town. Like that's what's done here was music. And so she was like, no, me and my friend Tracy, we've made a few independent films and da-da-da-da. She was like, I'm going to set up a meeting for you to meet with my partner. And she's editing right now, but you can go to the editing suite and interview with her. And make a long story short, I ended up working for them and we ended up making Being Bobby Brown.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, which was an iconic, Being Bobby Brown was such an iconic. I mean, at the time, everyone was talking about it with Bobby and Whitney and the whole, like everyone was able to get an inside look into it all. But then looking back on it, it was really a huge, huge show.
It was a huge show.
Yes.
And props to my bosses, Tracy Baker Simmons and Wanda Shelley, and a very key and critical person at that time that people don't know was key and critical to that show, Phaedra Parks.
Yeah. Oh, Phaedra was the attorney for Bobby.
She was Bobby's lawyer.
Yes, she was.
And so, we Bravo at the time didn't have any original programming on that show on their network. All they had was reruns, syndicated shows, and Being Bobby Brown was their first original show. And what they saw, what those two Black women, Tracy Baker Simmons and Wanda Shelley, were able to do with, for the record, a team of Black women, which is going to include me in development, on the legal. One of our assistants at the time was Lori Hall, who is now the head of marketing at TV One.
Wow.
It was like Tracy and Wanda was giving every Black woman they could find their shot.
Yes.
On the show, we had females in writing and directing certain episodes and stuff like that. And so it was a Black woman run engine over there at Being Bobby Brown. And I learned so much from those women. Those two women, Tracy and Wanda, are still like my big sisters. I still call them like, I got to call Wanda when I hang up from this.
Yeah.
And
You
they're still,
introduced me to Tracy, and I speak to Tracy quite a bit. She's an amazing mentor and someone you could just learn so much from. She's
yeah.
phenomenal.
And she's a firecracker. She don't take no mess.
Yes.
Yeah, but Wanda is more like Zen and Mother Earth, and like,
Yes.
baby, I'm bringing you some herbs, and let me put some flowers on you, and let's talk. That's
Yeah.
that's Wanda, and so that's why
Yeah.
at first with this, like, oh my God, with this ascended, elevated, inspiring spirit, and then you got Tracy, who's a bulldog, who's like
Right.
Nook. I always say, if you call them, Tracy is Nook if you buck, and Wanda is wipe me down.
I'll wipe it down. That's so
smooth. She like, Tracy
right.
is like, Nook if you buck, boy. Like, Tracy came out of the Dungeon family.
Yes.
She produced a lot of those early Dungeon family videos. She oversaw the music videos for the Dungeon family, for all those iconic videos, Sleepy Brown, Outkast, all of them. That's Tracy Baker Simmons. And so and so so that class of Black women, Tracy and Wanda, me, Lori, Phaedra, really helped to pioneer reality TV as you know it, because there had never been an all Black cast in the reality TV space until being Bobby Brown. And actually, reality TV wasn't even a term yet when we did that show. We were calling it a celebrity docuseries.
It was called a celebrity docuseries.
It was called a celebrity docuseries. And so Bravo then got the notion for Housewives. And I don't know, I don't want to lie, I don't know exactly how that transpired, but I know Phaedra was heavily involved in that. So like, how Nikki always be like, y'all my sons, baby, y'all all Miss Phaedra's sons, whether y'all like it or not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Or not. Y'all are all Phaedra's sons, because it was that squad that led to what we know now with Love and Hip Hop and Housewives and all of these shows. Came from really the work of that collective of Black women who put that show together. And then Phaedra then taking it to the next level with the Housewives franchise and stuff. So props to Phaedra.
Yeah. Shout out to Phaedra Parks and her babies.
Yes, props to Miss Phaedra. So so then after we finished being Bobby Brown, I went and I was the company manager for the Atlanta Ballet. And the one piece that I'm proud that I did over there was Aquemini. I did the Outkast ballet, Aquemini.
Wow.
And we got opening night with the symphony, Big Boy performs and all of that.
Oh my God, that's huge.
Yeah, it's funny because at the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame, they set me and Big Boy at the table together, and we hadn't seen each other since then, and so it was like a reunion at the table. So I worked at they had hired me mid-season because their company manager had left. So they were looking for someone who was going to do the job permanent, who really had the ballet background and stuff like that. And so when my season ended, they didn't bring me back, but I didn't feel no way about it because I knew going in, it was like a temporary job that they just needed to get through the season. They really needed to hire someone who really understood the inner workings of running a ballet. And so, or being that when you're the company manager, you're the kind of liaison between the board and the artistic director and like getting things done for the dancers and that kind of stuff. And so I was glad that I was there that season to be a part of Aquemini. And then I left there and I was unemployed because they had found someone else to be the company manager. And I was like, oh, dear God, I need a job. And so I called this woman who had been our coordinator on being Bobby Brown. And she said, I got a job for you. She was like, I need a production secretary over here where I'm working on this show. Because we call it all a show, whether it's a TV show or a movie or whatever, we call it all a show. And she was like, I'm working on this show. And I need, she didn't even need a production secretary. She's on an office PA, which was way below the pay grade of what I had been working the last two projects, but I needed a job. And I was like, okay, I'll come over there. I don't care. I just need a job. You know what I'm saying? me the job. And I pull up and it is the Tyler Perry Distribution Center. So this is before this is 2005. So this is
Yeah.
before he has any studio. All he had was his distribution center on Northside Drive.
He was
And
still doing plays, I believe.
he was still doing plays. And where we
Yes.
were at was where he was burning the copies. He had a whole like little warehouse kind of set up where he was burning the copies and stuff for the plays. And so we worked out of there for a little while, and then we took over the old Sidetrack Museum, and that became the soundstage. And I worked so hard that they promoted me from office PA to production secretary, and that was on Medea's family reunion.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so I
Yes.
finished. I got pregnant at the end of Medea's family reunion.
Uh-huh.
And so then I came back after we wrapped Medea's family reunion. We went on a little break. I came back right when he was getting ready to shoot House of Pain, when he shot those 100 episodes and just sold them like that. So I worked maybe a month, and then my doctor put me on bed rest.
Wow.
And so I had to go on bed rest for a month. And I had to go on bed rest for a month. And then and Katie Trobes, that was the coordinator who gave me that job. I went on bed rest, and then I just realized that there was no way I was going to be able to work the 12 to 14-hour days. And at the time, I was going through some things with my son's father, who's an amazing dad, but he was nervous and made some mistakes at the time, and I was kind of thugging it out a little bit alone during the pregnancy. And so even though I was supposed to be on bed rest, partially because I got diagnosed with cervical cancer again while I was pregnant. And so I was supposed to be on bed rest, but I needed to support myself. And so I went and got a job. I went back to my roots in retail, and I got a job as an assistant manager at the retail store. And I worked up until he came. And unfortunately, because I wasn't able to sit still, he came early. He came like 6 weeks early. But they knew he was coming early because my cervix was so weak because of the cancer.
Yes.
And so I had out all these steroid treatments and stuff like that to get prepared for him to come. And he came, and I had postpartum depression because I was just feeling really alone, and it was really hard. And this was my first child. I kind of felt like I was in it by myself. I had one really good girlfriend at the time, my friend Cece, who was supporting me in every way she could. But I just felt like I really was just like, I was down.
And postpartum is real, and especially amongst Black women and women of color. It's very real, and we ignore it. We ignore the signs of that.
Yeah, and I definitely had it, and I started going to therapy. And I forced my son's father to come to therapy with me because I was like, you have to do better by me.
Yeah, I know that's right.
You just have to do better by me. And we have to figure out a way in which, and at this time he had started, like, right after I told him I was pregnant, he started dating somebody else. She ended up pregnant. Our sons are 6 months apart. And I was so hurt and devastated and sad and down and all these things. And I was like, no, we're going to go to therapy because you're going to treat me better. And you're going to figure out how to treat me better. And like, I'm not going to go through this life parenting this boy, this male child by myself. You're going to have to step up. And I'm also not going to let you be a source of strain for me. You're going to have to treat me better. And so we went to therapy and worked through our stuff, worked through our own individual person stuff. And me and Andre have not had any problems since. We're like this now.
Yes, like, y'all are. I have bear witness myself to see how close you both are, and how amazing co-parents, and even the other mother, the other one that he had a child with. You know, all of y'all are really very close. Yep.
And we learned to support each other and be there for each other. She babysat for me. I babysat for her. Like, the kids have lived between 3 houses, and that's how they see their life. You know what I mean? Like, they've lived, like, my sis know, like, I need you to get Alex. I'm like, okay. When she started going to school to get her nursing degree, I started picking the boys up from school because we made sure they went to school together, and I would pick the boys up from school so she could go to school at night to get her nursing degree. And I'm proud my sister got her nursing degree. And so,
yeah. How do you think you all made that happen? Was it because you all were just looking at the overall bigger picture of the children, or was there certain nuances or certain things that y'all had to kind of like work through in order for that to happen?
Yeah, we definitely had some stuff to work through because there was a lot of hurt there in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of hurt and pain there in the beginning, and we had to get past that. But eventually, and I'll give props to my son's father. He was the one who would make it clear to us, y'all gonna be stronger if y'all get along better.
I love that.
It's not benefiting y'all to be mad at each other about decisions I made.
Yes.
Y'all didn't go out to harm each other. So and he would force us to like engage. Like he would do things like he would drop both of the boys off at Keisha's house and be like, you got to go get the boys from Keisha's. I'm busy. Like that. Or leave them at my house and be like, oh, Alex over at Kim's house. You got to go see her to get him.
Yes.
And so, I had to give him a props. He just wasn't having that. He was like, I'm not having this disjointed family. Like we're family. It's something the way it came to be, but it is what it is. And like, everybody gonna step up and be better, and we're gonna take care of each other. And that's how we have been. And we still, we have our little fights and spats, not really me and Keisha, but we still like we're family, we're a collective, and the boys have been better for it. Having that, I think both of them are they're 15 and 14 now, and they're better for it. Haven't had that kind of lived experience where they just had this like collective family. And so I was still working that retail job, and eventually it just the commute got to be too much because I was living in East Atlanta and it was in Marietta, and that commute was in my butt. And so some dear friends of mine owned a foster care agency. And they were like, we can give you, do you want to come work over here? You can sit if you need to bring the baby to work. Sometimes you can, and you have a set salary. And it was
that's a blessing.
Yeah. And it was like, and I did that while simultaneously I signed up to go to massage therapy school. And when my son was about 10 months old, my mother,
so wait, hold up. So you totally was like, okay, forget the entertainment industry, movie industry, and you was like, I'm going to do something that's a little bit, what were you thinking? More stable, more
stable. And I'm a Creole girl. My father's side of the family is Creole, so I'm drawn to spiritual modalities. You know what I mean? I'm drawn to yoga and massage and acupuncture and things that have more spiritual meaning because of my heritage and my culture and stuff. And so I thought massage therapy is a place where women in my family were healers. And so I was like, this is along the lines of that. You know what I mean? So, I just thought at that time when I had my son, I was 29 when I got pregnant. I was 30 when he came. And there was part of me, because when you turn 30, you think you old.
Yeah.
So,
and then you begin to look at your life and like, did I accomplish everything that I said I want, that you foresaw yourself to be at 30, right?
Exactly. And I hadn't accomplished anything in my mind. I'm 30. I'm still a renter. I don't have a career. I don't have any savings. Now I got this baby and I ain't got my stuff together. And I was like, this pipe dream of being a writer and an artist, like that's not going to feed my son. And so I was like, I gotta start making some big girl decisions and like be able to be a better, do what needs to be done or whatever. And so my mother, when my son was about 10 months old, my stepdad who had raised us had passed away, and my mother decided, because 3 of her children were here, that she was going to move to Atlanta and get away from the violence and the cold winters and all of that in Chicago. And she moved here to be a support to me and my brother, Crick, who at the time had a younger kid. He had my nephew, Quentin, who's only Quentin's maybe like 3 years older than my son. He was maybe like 4 when my mom moved here. He was 4 when my mom moved here. And my son was 10 months old. And so she moved here to help us with our kids and to be with her kids. And it was my mother who kept reminding me of my past lives, who was like, you're so happy. Like when I would talk to people about art and stuff, even though I wasn't doing it, she was like, your face lights up when you talk about writing and making TV shows and all this stuff. Or
Yeah.
like she would be like I started a walk team for the March of Dimes, because when I knew I was gonna have that premature baby, like I lived by the March of Dime website. I would go there every day and be like, hey, he's 28 weeks now. If he comes in, this is what might happen, and these are the chances of his survival and all of that stuff. So I had gotten Rashana Ali at the time was really heavily involved in March of Dimes. And so I had signed up and I was doing a lot of work with March of Dimes. And my mother would say, you see how happy you are over there with the March of Dimes? You should see if they have a job for you, or you should see if they have, something for you to do or whatever. And she kept saying to me, either doing something creative or doing something with the community is what's going to make you happy. I don't know which. I don't know if you're going to do both. I don't know what that is. She was like, but I only see you happy when you're doing your March of Dimes stuff, when you come back from those meetings and those walks and those, planning sessions and all of that. You're lit up when you're talking about it,
Yes.
And when you talk to people about your former life of being a creative and a writer, you're lit up when you're talking about it. And she was like, you at some point are going to have to get back to the things that make you happy and get back to the things that God has called you to do. And she kept pressuring me, like, you should see if they have a job for you, a paying job for you over at March of Dimes. And I knew what she was saying was, you got to be somewhere where you're celebrated and not tolerated, where you're happy, where your spirit is thriving. And at the time, she was saying, the only time I see that in you is when you're coming back from doing this volunteer work.
And on top of it, I also believe that she also saw your purpose.
Yeah.
Sometimes, we have people that enter our lives, whether it's our parents, grandparents, or even just a total stranger that see our purpose. Because you went from doing all these various things, but what your mother was doing was like, your purpose is just being able to tell these stories and to be able to help all the people. And, and I see a light in you with that, and being celebrated, as well. So,
So she was just like, my mother was like, you hear a lot of people talking about their parents being like, don't do that, get a real job. No, my mother was like, walking your purpose. Walking your divine purpose that has no attachment to it. You know what I mean? And she's like, my job as a mother, I want my child thriving and happy. You're not thriving and happy going to work at these jobs. And I don't, as a mother, it was hurting her to see that, And so my mother was like, always like, do what it is you love, do what you do. When you gonna get back to writing, when you gonna try to get some more work in community advocacy. Like she was like, do your purpose. And so what I ended up doing was going down to People TV here in Atlanta.
People TV.
People TV, which is like, local TV or whatever. And I took this class so that I could get myself a little talk show on this community TV channel. And I ended up meeting people down there who were making indie films, and I ended up doing that. So I was like, I at this point now I had graduated from massage therapy school. I had gone through cervical cancer for a third time, had fought it for a third time. And the last time was the roughest time. And so it's funny because I ended up meeting Dr. Sabi, and he gave me a care package to get the cancer out of my body. And I went from them being like, we don't know if we're going to be able to save her, to being completely fine, to being completely fine. He was speaking out at a hotel out by the airport, and my massage therapy teachers took me there to see him. And I was so weak that I couldn't even climb the stairs to get to where he was speaking. They had to leave me at the bottom of the stairs. And next thing I know, they come down with him. They brought him down the stairs to me. And he gave me a box of herbs, and I had gone through those herbs. At the time, one of his daughters, I think, had a spot over on Old National. And he was telling me that when I got through the herbs to go see her, but it's funny because before I could even get to going to see her, I'm on the train one day, because now I ain't got no car. I'm just thugging it out. I'm on the train one day. I get off at the train station, and who do I sit down next to at the train station? I sit down next to Mama Pill.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I sit down next to Mama Pill, and I started
Uh-huh.
seeing her, and she started healing me. She started working with me and healing me, and and got me through it and survived it. So anyway, so then I met the independent film world here in Atlanta, and I started like working on them with movies and doing different things with them, and I was able to get on my own feet. I had been staying with my mom while I was sick. I was able, me and one of my dear friends went and rented this huge house for our kids to be in, and just was like getting my, trying to like get myself together, but was finding my place again, in the creative world through working with all these different indies and doing independent films and stuff like that. And that led me to getting another job just to balance it, because these indie films weren't paying any money. And I ended up working at the children's bookstore in 2010. I ended up working at the children's bookstore, Little Shop of Stories.
Yes, I love that store.
Yes, I love that store. I
started
working at Little Shop and then got diagnosed with breast cancer.
My God.
I was like, why is my body? Why is
oh my God.
I'm like, why is it fighting itself so hard? So I ended up getting breast cancer, and again, thank God, caught that in the early stages. Didn't even have medical insurance. I went to Planned Parenthood just for my annual, and they discovered the mass.
Oh my God.
So sometimes when people talking about tearing down Planned Parenthoods, I'll just post, I keep with me that letter, that the form and the documents where they gave me a referral, and was like, if it wasn't for Planned Parenthood, I probably wouldn't be here, because they caught it so early. I was able to keep my breast and everything. And so I went through that and was working at the bookstore, and by working at that children's bookstore, it garnered me so many relationships in the literary world, because I didn't know when I got hired there that it was one of the top 5 children's bookstores in the nation. Yes. And so I eventually worked my way up to being the general manager there, and I was still working on independent films. That's when I made that film with Tobe, Products of the American Ghetto, and I met you and all that stuff back in, like, I think that was like 2016 or something like that. And I was just working on these indies and working on music videos, some that were paying a little bit, but my primary job was the bookstore. But the bookstore introduced me to the literary world. It's where I learned everything about the literary world, is where I made all my relationships in the literary world. It got to the point, because I was running this children's bookstore, I was invited to conferences to speak. I got to serve on Obama's selection committee for the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. I worked on committees like the Children's Book Council, and it really opened me up to a different way of writing, because I always thought that I would be a screenwriter.
Yes.
That was the type of writing that I wanted to do. And being in this space and seeing the impact that literature was having on kids, and not even just kids in community, that it was the tool that was helping people that was teaching people about other cultures and nurturing empathy and all of that. I just really fell madly in love. I really fell madly in love with literature.
I remember going to the conference with you for the first time, and you just lit up like no other. You lit up like you was in, and it was because you was around a community of so many authors, and you was like, you know who that is? Of this person right here. I got to introduce you to it. Like, you was just like loved books and loved the culture of books, So we are now at you working at the bookstore. You still working at People's TV, I believe. And then you write a book. What was that first book?
So I write this book, and it was called I'm Not Dying With You Tonight.
Yes.
And it was inspired by the civil unrest in Baltimore after the murder of Freddie Gray. My co-author and I, Geely, had read this story about kids in Baltimore at Frederick Douglass High School who had got trapped behind a police barricade in the midst of
Yes.
the civil unrest, because the city of Baltimore did some really unfortunate things, is that they closed down schools early and told the kids to disperse and go home, but then they shut down public transportation.
Yes,
So
they
a lot
did.
of these kids didn't have a way to get home. They just kind of got caught out there. And so Geely and I, like, we're moms, and we were concerned about like what happened to these kids and what a night would look like being
Yeah.
a kid caught in civil unrest and just trying to get home. And so we reached out to the school. We did all this stuff trying to find those kids and try to make sure those kids were safe. And then those kids that made it home. And nobody would communicate because they probably like, who are you two strange people trying to ask about these people's children?
Yeah.
Phone. In hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, now I get it. Why nobody would give us any information? But we're writers, and that's how we process. And so that birthed I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. And even though it's set in Atlanta and based around, it's set in a civil unrest that happens in Atlanta and stuff, it was inspired by that incident. And so we started writing that book. We started writing that in 2015. And then in 2017, is when it sold. And it took it until 2019 to get released. And it's funny because 2017 then is because I met you in 2016, and then 2017 we're planning the event for the weekend. What was that weekend called?
It was 022, October 22nd, which is Stop National Police Brutality Day. It was 022 weekend.
Yep. So it was 022 weekend. And so we were able, at that point, I think I had quit writing at the bookstore because I had gotten my advance for I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. But I'm Not Dying With You Tonight was already, it was already going and flowing. And we were working on our next book. And Geely had sent me an article about the Kennesaw State cheerleaders taking a knee in solidarity with Cap. And we had started kind of outlining that book. And then I come to 022 weekend and meet them.
Yes, I was looking for my book because I have my book somewhere. It's on my bookshelf, and I think it's in one of my bookshelves. But I have your book. I was going to lift it up for all the viewers because this is also on YouTube as well. Yeah, this will be on YouTube. Yeah.
This is the first one. I'm Not Dying With You Tonight.
Yes, there it goes.
Yeah, about the this is about two girls, one black and one white, who survived the night in civil unrest.
Yes,
it's fast paced. I like to call it a social justice adventure.
And
how they survived the night. So then I do 022 weekend with you, which again is where I meet Monteria for the first time. Where I met a lot of people for the first time. Dre,
Tori Russell, Jay Morrison, Ernestine.
Yes, everybody.
Mike Brown Sr., all of the families.
Yes, everybody was there. And so, and I had been participating in protests up until that point. I remember I marched for Mike Brown. I actually marched with Congressman John Lewis after the death of Mike Brown. And so I had been showing up in that way.
Yes.
But for me, I hadn't really committed yet. You know what I mean? It was it was like a lot of people, it was reactionary, right? Oh, Mike Brown got killed and we off in a march today and I'm putting my marching shoes on.
Right.
And then, march for a week and then I'm back to my life kind of, after that. But it was that weekend, honestly, that was transformative for me. That was no, there's work to be done and there's ways in which, the work that you do even as a writer can be incorporated into this. And so, so anyway, so Geely and I are now plotting this book about these cheerleaders taking a knee.
Yeah.
And I get there to 022 weekend and you've invited the Kennesaw State cheerleaders. And I was like, Geely and I was like, yo, if we need any sign at all.
Right.
This is it.
Is fine. And we loved up on them. We loved up on them because everyone was looking at them. I mean, they were really going through some major charges for them not taking a knee. I mean, for them taking a knee, you know, and so that weekend we loved up on them, had them speak. We was like, come on and everything. So it was, it was a beautiful, beautiful moment.
Yes, definitely. And so then that sparked While We Fly.
While we fly, and look at that book cover. For those that are just listening on the podcast, make sure you get Kimberly Latrice Jones' book and Gilly. What's Gilly's last name? Siegel.
Yep, Gilly Siegel.
And yeah, so, get both of these books. Mm-hmm. Now, are the books for adults, for children, for?
I feel like adults can read them and appreciate them, but they are written for teenagers. So they're written for, they're written for 12 and up.
Okay.
They're written for 12 and up. And so the other thing is, a lot of times it's, God puts you in a position to be able to do your work in multiple ways, because what these books have provided for me and Gili is entree into schools to have conversations about race and social justice and things like that. And so a lot of, authors are coming into schools and they're talking about their books and they're talking about, heavy things. But like this really allows us to dig in to social justice. Like our presentation that we do for While We Fly, we say this book is our ode to athlete activists. We teach the kids about 100 years of athlete activists. We start at Jesse Owens in the 1930s Olympics and we go all the way up to now to Gap and everything in between. So we talk about Tommy and Carlos, who held up the Black Fist at the 68 Olympics. We talk about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We talk about Muhammad Ali. We talk about Cap. We talk about Andrew Hawkins. We talk about Megan Rapinoe. We talk about Billie Jean King. We talk about all these athlete activists over the years. And so, we're like, your schools may not have CRT, but all you got to do is book us.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. So you have your book out, and then all of a sudden, I just see you go viral. Like, I was like, yes, like you always was an amazing, as long as I've known you, an amazing orator. How you say that? Orator? Yeah.
That's
me and my English. Yeah. English is not my main language. Ebonics is. No, I'm just playing.
Hey, the way we speak is cultural, not remedial.
Right, exactly. So you've always been an amazing orator, and I see your video, and it was, I was like, oh my God, yes. And I had to repost it. And you was like, you said, you better be happy that we are not asking for, go ahead, revenge. What's the line? For revenge.
They're lucky that what Black people want is equality and not revenge.
Yes. And when you ended it with that, from this 9-minute just history lesson of economics, of how trade and how just basically it's between you and Tamika Mallory, you all summed up in your iconic speeches. And I don't think it wasn't like y'all both wrote something down or anything, but you could tell that the ancestors were pulling and going through you both during a time of Freedom Summer, of uprising all across this nation. Everyone was outraged of, summer of 2020, of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. Then we was dealing with our other brother in Atlanta that was murdered.
Rayshard Brooks,
Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, and when Tamika was all like, "We learned this from you all," when she was like, she said, "We are in a state of emergency, but we learned this from watching you," and so you can't be upset. And then here you come with, "You all better be happy. We only asking for equality and not revenge." I was like, just so powerful, and so you go viral.
Yeah.
How was that? So, okay, I could see it from a person that didn't experience so much of you experience. And this is what Walking My Moccasins is all about, is learning people's backstory so they get to a certain iconic point or a certain aha moment, So here you've been through, you worked with the greats of the greats, You your book is New York's bestseller. And then by just someone just recording you and you're just speaking your mind and then it goes viral. Now your followers, I think at the time when I met you, it was like about 5,000-6,000. Then it goes up to 100,000 in a day. You get verified. You're on billboards. Diddy reaches out to you. Like, it just was like, what was that moment for you when it hit?
Mm-hmm. It was interesting because the night that I posted it, I called my co-author Gili and I said, Gili Boo, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think I might have just got us canceled. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, I posted this video and people are starting to repost it. And I think that I apologize to you. I think I just killed our writing career. I think people are not going to have us back at schools. People ain't going to want us around their kids, like whatever. And she said, well, hold on, send it to me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I sent it to Gili and all she sends me back is one sentence that says, I'm with you.
Oh my God. Wow.
And that's
now
it.
For those that don't know, Gili is she's from Israel. She's Jewish, and so white Jewish. Yeah. So, so from someone like that, they say, I'm with you.
Yeah. She was like, I'm with you. She was like, I'm with you. She was like, they can try to cancel it if they want to, do whatever they want to do. She said, what you said was what everybody was thinking and couldn't put it into words. And she was like, no matter how the chips fall, sis, I'm with you. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see what happens. And I went to bed that night and I woke up that morning and I had all these mixed text messages from you, from her, from other family members, like, yo, LeBron just tweeted to you, Madonna just posted you, Lizzo just posted you, Viola Davis just posted you, yo, do you see you have a message from Sharon Stone? Like, I was like, what are y'all talking about? They're like, Trevor Noah's talking about you on his Facebook right now. I was just like, what? And I started going through the messages and combing through them. I was like, yo, but you know what's so funny is I remember that day when I recorded the speech, I remember at some point I kind of like checked out and I thought it was rage, but I realized it was the ancestors that I always say, because people always ask me like, because people say, well, I see people making songs with your voice and stuff on it. You don't have nobody, checking that to make sure you get paid. I said, let me tell you something. Those words don't belong to me.
Yes.
God is going to see to it that I'm okay financially and economic in the ways in which he intends for me to be. But that speech don't belong to me. That speech belongs to the people. So if they want to make songs, if they want to make t-shirts, I'm not going to go around chasing people. I'm always copyright infringement. That speech doesn't belong to me.
Yes.
It belonged to the people. That was the ancestors carrying something. And it's funny because the first couple lines of that speech comes from a speech that I will never forget, because it's funny you said I'm a good orator, because throughout middle school, because I was struggling in school because of my ADHD, the one thing that I was good at was the orator. I was always in the oratory competitions, and I was going to after school programs down at Operation Push, and I'm sure you probably remember Reverend Willie T. Barrow. She was running Push at the time, and she had written an article in the Defender, which is a black paper in Chicago back in the day. She had written an article in the Defender, and because my 7th and 8th grade teacher, Miss Lumpkin, knew that I had an affection for Reverend Willie T. Barrow, she gave me that article that she wrote, and she allowed me to deliver that speech as my competition speech, and I won with that speech. And I still remember the first pieces of what Reverend Willie T. Barrow wrote, and she said, we must never get that economics are the reason that the African was brought to America. We did not arrive on America's shores looking for freedom and the land of opportunity. We came to do the work that others could or would not do. We came and made others rich. The slave was the backbone of the agricultural economy in the South and the textile industry in the North. And I carried that speech with me for 30 years. For 30 years. So those first two lines of my speech are actually borrowed from the sentiment that I learned from having to memorize that article about Blacks and economics by Reverend Willie T. Barrow at Operation Push.
Yes.
And that's why I say in there, I'm so glad as a child that I got to spend my afternoons at Operation Push.
Yes.
And so that let me know, because unfortunately Reverend Barrow has long since passed away. I say that was her talking.
Yes, it was. And it was a full circle moment from
Yeah.
everything from your life, for everything that your family was pouring into you, or your mother was pouring into you, all of your experiences, it was a full circle moment. And it
Yeah.
was for me knowing you in the short time that I've been knowing you. I haven't known you all your life, but in the short time, I said, she deserves this moment. She deserves this time. She deserves this recognition. She deserves everything that's coming her way from this. I think I texted to you. I said, you
Yeah.
deserve, if there's someone that I know that deserves this, you deserve this, because it's not like you were an overnight orator and an overnight that just had, this is the fact that you actually lived such a textured, layered life, that where it wasn't just you speaking, but it was also wisdom.
Yeah.
And then I knew that from that moment, everything that you're going to do is going to be in a place of wisdom.
Thank you, Queen.
So even where you're doing now is all in an amazing place of wisdom, because you have experience, you've been there, you've done that, you've met this person, you've been around the who's who and the what, you've seen the lowest of low. Your health you fought cancer 3 times. You've been through all of these things. So at this moment, in this place where you're at now, is every decision you make is of a place of wisdom. And for that reason, you deserve every accolade, every bestseller, every offer, everything, and you deserve it all, and I really wanted for people to know your story. I really wanted people to know your backstory, because you're not just someone that just went viral on accident. It wasn't by accident. It was by divine. Definitely. It was by divine,
Yes.
It was by divine.
And I say that what it did was it allowed me the financial freedom and, from the sales of the book, because the sales for my books went through the roof after that video went viral. And so what it allowed me was the economic freedom to be able to put money back into the community and back into the hands of people who I know in the movement, who are actually doing the work.
You donated to me a couple of times, which is a blessing.
Yes, it allowed me to be able to do that. And it also allowed me the freedom to not have to go to a job, so that when the kids at the AU are occupying the space, they can call me and say, Miss Kim, come down here. We need help to get ready for our meetings. Or, if there's some move that needs to be made, I can move. And I'm grateful that I'm surrounded by people like yourself, who have been doing, you and Griggs and stuff like that, who have been doing the work for a long time, because it's like, I didn't need to build out any infrastructure, right? I didn't need to be like, oh, now I got to go start a nonprofit or build out infrastructure. I'm like, no, I have friends who are on the ground doing the work. I just need to be a ready servant, like, for their calls. This is what this has blessed me to do, because that's the problem. Everybody want to be in charge. Everybody want to be the one that's the face of something that, yes, I found it. Everybody, we got a whole lot of soldier boys in the movement community. Like,
I'm the first.
Right. I was the first activist to press stickers on the wall. It's like, that, who cares? So
right.
So I'm just like, I'm grateful that I'm telling y'all, I'm so grateful for that O22 weekend, because what it did was it introduced me to a community of people that I could serve. And so now I have the freedom, the wherewithal, the space to participate in different organizations and moves and things like that, where I'm just there as a servant. And it's like, okay, Miss Kim's still going to go off and write these books and write these TV shows, so that when there's a GoFundMe, I can put money in it with ease. Or if you need T-shirts, to for an event or whatever, I don't need nobody to give me money out of the little Tilly and the GoFundMe. I don't worry. I
Yeah.
got the t-shirts. I'll go get the t-shirts done, and we can, we could keep moving and whatever, whatever. And so
Yes.
it's like I can honestly say that for the first time in my life at 45, right? At 45 years old.
Looking fly as ever, y'all. For anyone that go to the YouTube to look at how Kim looks.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I'm living my best life, and that it doesn't, I don't need celebrity. I don't need attention. I don't need all of this. And I appreciate what that viral video did, because what it
Yes.
did is allow me to be free to say, I can sit at this laptop all day and write as an abolitionist, so that I'm making sure that that's incorporated into the work that I'm doing, that I'm putting out in the world, whether it's a book or a TV show. But then I'm
Yes.
also free, I'm free to show up for the kids in the community who are doing the work. I'm free to show up for my friends. I'm free to
Yes.
promote Griggs becoming, president of the NAACP. I'm free
Yeah.
to take frontliners like Shibby who are running for office and be able to promote his campaign and
Yes.
go, do show up at his events and things like that.
Yes.
It's like, to me, it don't get much better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you so how do you see the next 5 to 10 years?
I got it all planned out. I would say the way in which I view the next 5 to 10 years is that I'm going to continue to write. Writing has been my passion since I was, 7 or 8 years old. So I'm always going to write
Yeah.
in some capacity, whether it's articles. I write a lot of articles. I have a new article in Marie Claire, UK. I'm always going to write. I'm always going to write in some way. But I also continue to want to grow some of the work that we're doing over at the People's Uprising and all
Yeah.
of the other organizations and friends like you that I work with on different stuff. And just,
Yeah.
I really don't see a whole lot of change, because I'm like Plies. I'm like, I'm happy. Leave me alone. Um,
Yes.
and I know that this is an authentic happiness, because it's coming on the back of one of the most difficult years for me in terms of loss. I lost my
Yeah.
mom, I lost my brother, we lost Haroon. I lost several cousins that I was close to. I lost a niece, I lost the nephew. So I had a lot of,
Yeah.
I lost my relationship. You know what I mean? I broke up with my boyfriend.
Yeah.
I had an extreme year of loss. And so to
Mhm.
be able to be here now in October, when these things started hitting me, Haroon was the first hit at the end of February, and they kind of
Mhm.
just continued through September. But now
Yeah.
to be here a month later in October and feel like I'm the happiest I've ever been,
Yeah.
despite like 7 months of consistent loss,
Yeah.
to me, it's indicative of how much joy I have in the moment, that I could still be happy, despite all of the loss. And some of the loss wasn't as devastating as people would want it to be, because like I know my mother was tired. My
Yeah.
mother had her, most of her friends are gone, and her siblings are gone, all but one. And, she buried
Yeah.
2 husbands, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
She was in a lot of pain. Her health was not at its best. And she was suffering from depression. And so I know she was just tired. So I just am happy that my mother is resting. My brother had been sick and,
Mhm.
an invalid for years, for over 10 years. And so my brother is resting. We know Brother Haroon, as much as we would love for him to be here, he also had lots of medical struggles. And
Yeah.
so he may not have been ready to go, and we may not have been ready for him to go. But I'm like, but the peace that
Yes.
I know they find on the other side has
Mhm.
comforted me to not be selfish and say, I want your physical form here. I'm like, no, ascend, deity, and
You're
get to
right.
the next level, and just look back and check on me every now and again and help me with a little guidance and making sure I'm okay. And so
Yeah.
I feel them all around me. And so, yeah, in the next 5 years, I just want to continue on the path that I'm on. I want to continue to write great stories. I want
Yeah.
to continue to work towards the independence and the release of the trauma on my people. And
Yes.
if I had to say like one like little like selfish thing that I would say that I would want is I want to buy a bigger house because I live in an apartment. So I'm just like, that's my only goal that I'm working towards. And it looks very steady. Like by this time next year, I'll be able to make that move, is to buy myself a nice, big, beautiful home that is so that I can be grounded. Because I need that permanency to the space in order to be grounded. So that would be my biggest goal.
Yeah. Well, I am so proud of you. And this was, I learned so much, and I'm loving this because I'm getting to know a lot of my close friends that are just phenomenal and incredible, but getting to know and delve deeper into your life. And I'm learning that, like, wow, you just never know what people have been through and what got them to this place. And it also shows that nothing is by accident. No. Even the choices that you made, everything was by divine. And even if you made it when if God or the divine wanted you to go right and you went left, he's still or she's still going to make you. It's going to work it out on when you make go left. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think in this, your testimony showed that. I so appreciate you. How can people get in contact with you?
If you are watching on YouTube, you can see my handle right here, Kimberly Latrice Jones. That's me on Instagram. But if you are listening to audio on Instagram, I am on Instagram and TikTok. I am at Kimberly Latrice Jones, KIMBERLY LATRICE JONES. I had to put the Latrice in there because little Kim is also Kimberly Jones. You Google Kimberly Jones, you just getting all the Queen Bee.
So, yeah, I was wondering why you always had your middle name. That's why. I get it now. What do you want everyone to remember? Just looking at everything. How do you want everyone to remember or get from your testimony?
I would say the two things that I would want people to walk away is that growth comes from discomfort. That you gotta break limbs and fall down in order to grow, and that's okay. And also just that we are all better than our worst day. We are all better than our worst day. And so don't let the world, if the world tries to cancel you or beat you up or consistently remind you of the old mistakes that you made, just, for yourself that we are all better than our worst day. Some of us are not our worst day.
Beautiful. This is YoNasDa Lone Wolf and Kimberly Latrice Jones. And you just tuned in to episode 2 of Walk in My Moccasins. Matakiasi. Thank you. Love you, Kim.
Love you.